Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Get Ready to Play with the Well Health Safety Rating. My name is Kristen Hanser, and I'm Senior Partnerships Manager with the Green Sports Alliance. On behalf of GSA, we thank you for joining us today. We hope you all are staying safe and healthy, and we're really excited to dive into this topic with the wonderful speakers that you see on the screen. Just want to let you know, first, thanks to LNS Captioning, which is providing closed captioning for today's session, and there is information on that in the chat box to the right of your screen. You should be seeing my video as well as the slideshow below. You can toggle between both of them however you'd like to, and then as the speakers come on, you'll see their videos as well throughout the session. So before we kick things off, just want to thank the International Well Building Institute for being the presenting partner of this webinar and being able to dive more into the well health safety rating with this discussion, which you may have heard about, whether online or through some of our channels, or maybe you've seen the recent TV commercial with Venus Williams and J-Lo and Robert De Niro. If you haven't seen that, highly recommend taking a watch. It is really exciting. And if you haven't heard, also GSA recently announced a partnership with IWBI last November. And so we are working together to support teams, leagues, venues, in addition to companies, athletes, and fans to promote more sustainable communities. And so as part of this partnership, all of our GSA members get 25% off the Well Health Safety Rating. So if you haven't seen that information come in, email us, info@greensportsalliance.org is probably the best bet, and we'll be able to help you out with that. Also, a reminder that the webinar recording will be provided as well as the slides, and they'll be emailed to all the attendees after the session. The recording will also be uploaded to our YouTube page, which is listed here. If you have any questions about how to access this information, just feel free to email us. Also, if you haven't seen, we recently announced that the 2021 Green Sports Alliance Summit will be this June 22nd and 23rd. It will be virtual, and we are really excited to have another summit. So we are accepting interest in participating, speaking, and sponsors. So if you have an interest, please send me an email at kristen@greensportsalliance.org, and I'd be happy to give you some more information. We will be coming out publicly with some more details on the summit in the next couple of weeks. All right, so now I will introduce our speakers for today's session. So moderating and kicking things off is Melanie Cook. She is a director at the International Well Building Institute. Then she will give an overview of the health safety rating and some information about IWBI. And then we will hear from Mike Wendling, who is the director of event services at Scotiabank Arena, home of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Raptors. Then we'll hear from Katie Bailey, Sustainability Operations Manager at Rose Quarter Campus, home of the Portland Trailblazers, and Ryan Hemenway, the Director of Operations at Wells Fargo Center, home of the Philadelphia Flyers and the 76ers. So they will all share their experience about going through the rating process and hopefully give you some helpful information if you are considering going through it yourselves. We'll then go to a Q&A session with all of the speakers. And so if you have any questions at all throughout the session, you can look to the right side of your screen. There is a chat box. You can enter your questions through there, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. All right, so I think that's all of the housekeeping pieces. I will now welcome Melanie to join us on video and just briefly introduce Melanie. She is drawing upon her experiences in environmental health, serving as a technical solutions team at the International Well Building Institute. So she works to support IWBI's mission of providing technical support to project teams, developing tools and resources to facilitate the actual certification process, and leading workshops and presentations such as this to help educate the industry on the well building standard. So Melanie, I will pass things over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we got you.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the Green Sports Alliance for being our partners and having us on the line today for this webinar. So you've already heard my brief introduction, but I'm Melanie Cook. I'm from the International Well Building Institute, and I serve as our sports and entertainment venues sector lead. So I've had the pleasure of getting to work quite closely with the other panelists on the line today, with Katie, Mike, and Ryan, as they were pursuing the Well Health Safety Rating. And now that they've achieved the rating, it's really exciting to all be back on the line today and talk through some of their experiences. So if you don't mind just going to the next slide. Before we dive in, I just wanted to give a really high-level introduction quickly to what the Well Health Safety Rating is and who we are at the International Well Building Institute to help set the stage. So at IWBI, we are leading a global movement to transform health and well-being with a people-first approach to buildings, organizations, and communities. This past June, we launched the Well Health Safety Rating, which pulls from our existing expertise in healthy buildings, along with feedback that we had garnered and learned from a task force that we stood up almost a year ago now, back last March, our task force on COVID-19, which grew to include over 600 individuals, leaders in public health, medicine, design, real estate, government, academia, and so on. So the Well Health Safety Rating is an evidence-based, third-party verified rating focused on operational policies, maintenance protocols, emergency plans, and stakeholder engagement. You can see some of the key topic areas on your screen here too. It can apply to all new and existing buildings and space types, including stadiums, training centers, venues on college campuses, offices, and more. And we worked really closely with an advisory that we've stood up specifically around sports and entertainment venues during the development of the rating to ensure that the program would be very well aligned with some of the unique considerations of these sports venues and spaces, and really to ensure that, most importantly, it would provide as much value as possible to sports organizations during this really critical time. Next slide. When a venue goes through the process and achieves the Well Health Safety Rating, it results in the achievement of the Well Health Safety Seal. And this is a visual mark of confidence that helps to communicate all of that great work that the space has undergone to put health and well-being at the forefront of their operations. Next slide. Since we launched the rating, I mentioned back in June of last year, over 8,000 locations have enrolled. Over 729 million square feet represented, and the majority of these locations have already gone through and achieved the rating. Next slide. Last, but definitely not least, I just wanted to give a quick flavor for some of the organizations that are pursuing or have achieved the Well Health Safety Rating. And you'll see that there's a number of recognizable brands across various sectors, so sports organizations and beyond. But even better, we have three great arenas here to talk about their experiences directly, working with WELL and IWBI. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike to kick us off. Thanks everyone for joining today.
Thanks, Melanie. I think we'll have to work to get Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment on that last slide. So my name is Mike Wendling. I'm the Director of Event Services for Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. You can go to the next slide. We oversee 9 different venues that we either own or operate. And for the Well Health Safety Rating, we got first in touch with this idea through our close ties with the Oakview group down in the States. So just like many other organizations and stadiums, we were looking for ways to make our fans feel safe to come back and to return once we were allowed to have them back in our arenas. So we chose 2 of our arenas to get the Well Health Safety Rating. We chose Scotiabank Arena, which is our biggest arena. It's where the Maple Leafs and the Raptors and our live concerts run out of. And we also chose MLSE Launchpad. So Launchpad is a community-based rec center that services underprivileged youth in Toronto. And so we thought it was very important for this community building to have this health safety rating to also make sure that, all the families and all the parents can feel safe getting their kids to return to activities as well. And then finally, we kind of jumped full board into it as well. We invested in the WELL AP, or the WELL Accredited Professional Program. So I went through the WELL AP program and became an accredited professional about 3 months ago. it kind of helped us give a more holistic view over what the WELL certification more broadly means and how we can use these learnings as we go forward with our capital projects. And we're in the process of getting 3 or 4 team members also to become WELL APs in the near future. So you go to the next slide. So the biggest benefits that we found with partnering with WELL were documentation, internal minimum standard, and public and staff positivity. So on the documentation standpoint, like a lot of different venues, all of our processes and our procedures just lived in people's heads. So we've had some very long tenured staff that have been, with the arena for 20+ years, and this is kind of the way we always did it, and how we went about cleaning or how we went about converting the stadium. It was all just lived in people's heads and got passed down by word of mouth. So a large part of the health safety rating is documentation and making sure our procedures and our policies make sense on paper. So this is a huge benefit for us to get a centralized system of everything that goes on in the stadium, and then be able to publicly showcase that internally to our entire teams of how we're keeping everyone safe. It also allowed us to have a set minimum standard. So the example I always use is, while there's different ASHRAE documents or whatnot that we were keeping our building up to, we didn't have a reason for doing everything that we wanted when it came to the venue. So, when your global partnerships team comes to you and says they want to convert this new space and they need budgetary dollars for it, venue and ops were always the cost center. So we're always where budget gets cut from. And so now with the health safety rating, we were really able to say, no, we can't cut that because we will lose our safety rating. And it was very important for us as an organization to keep this health safety rating. And so it kind of gives us some teeth when we're in the boardroom fighting for dollars. And then finally, as Melanie mentioned, we just achieved the health safety rating about 3 weeks ago. We became the first venue in Canada to achieve the health safety rating. And while we haven't gone publicly out to our fans yet, we're in the process of building out our marketing campaign and stealing a lot from the next 2 panelists that you'll hear from. We did launch it internally on our intranet to our staff and to all team members. And the sentiment from just the internal staff has been amazing. I personally have hourly staff that have been laid off for almost a year now. And when we announced that on our workplace, the comments started flowing in about how excited they are to come back to a brand new clean building, a building that's safe, and that they really appreciated MLSE investing in the building and in the infrastructure to make sure that everyone was going to be safe, not just our fans, but our internal staff members as well. So we've had a great experience with the WELL Health Safety Rating. It took a little while to get, but it really helped us get our ducks in a row and make sure that we can confidently say to fans when they come back that they're going to be safe in our buildings. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Katie.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks so much. I want to first thank the Green Sports Alliance and the IWBI for having us on this. We really always enjoy opportunities to speak about some of the things that we're doing at the Rose Quarter campus. So to kick things off, just for a little bit of background, the Rose Quarter campus consists of 3 primary properties. It's the Moda Center, which is the home of the Trailblazers, our annex office building, which has a few ancillary, like a restaurant and a few other rehabilitation clinics, things like that. And then our Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which is our smaller, I believe it's 12,000 seat venue and theater. And so going through this process, we were kind of evaluating some of the certifications that were available, and ultimately chose to go with the WELL Health Safety Rating for 3 primary reasons. So the first is we felt like the WELL Health and Safety Rating approach to addressing the pandemic was a little bit more in line with our organizational values. So we're a very people-oriented organization for both guests and staff. So we want to make sure that everything that we're doing kind of keeps in mind, like, how is this impacting, our staff and our guests when they come into our building. And we felt like the WELL Health Safety Rating really approached the pandemic and the response to the pandemic from all sides of the issue. And what I mean by that is the WELL Health and Safety certification encompasses operational issues at kind of the forefront with cleaning and sanitization, or ventilation controls, making sure that we are operating as efficiently as possible. But then it also goes into other aspects of health and well-being. So it looks at things like air and water quality. It looks at emergency preparedness, access for your staff to mental and physical health service resources, which, those other factors outside of just our operational controls, we really felt like could exacerbate, the COVID-19 impacts and affect people's ability to really recover from the pandemic. So when we saw that this certification had that, we really felt like it was a beneficial piece of that and more impactful to our business in the long run. The second reason was kind of the flexibility in how we achieve the certification. So there are something like 22 features that you can select from, and you only have to meet the requirements for 15 in order to achieve the certification. And what that allowed us to do was really tailor our responses to what our business needs are. And we chose features that we thought would help make our venue as safe as possible when we were returning for reopen or returning to fans. So for this year, just for an example, we focused on features that really heavily detailed like our cleaning and sanitization policies, our ventilation strategies. We did additional testing to ensure that our ventilation systems were running efficiently, air and water quality, and then those health service resources for our staff. And so that's kind of where we wanted to focus our efforts this year. And we felt like it put us in the best position to reopen with some degree of safety and, kind of scientifically backed procedures. And then next year, the nice thing is if we decide that, the parameters around cleaning and ventilation are staying the same, we might be able to focus on other features within WELL, such as the communication strategies, or a little bit more focus on the emergency preparedness planning, just to make sure that we're up to date and doing everything we can in those areas. So we really like the flexibility of it. And then finally, we chose the WELL Health and Safety rating in part because it is independently third-party verified. So similar to, we are a LEED Platinum certified building for the Moda Center. And similar to that certification, the WELL Health Safety rating is also validated and verified by the GBCI. And so we felt like having that independent party that's going through and assessing and kind of taking it out of the body that created the requirements lended a little bit more validity to it from our perspective and in our opinion, and we felt more comfortable with that. And then we can go to the next slide. And then the process for us, so it took us a little bit longer than we thought it would to complete, and that's kind of for two reasons. It took in total about 4.5 months to complete the certification, from selecting the features to submitting our initial review. And the reasons for that was, number one, is we probably needed to build a little bit larger team around how we were gathering the information and putting these documents together. But number two, and probably the biggest impact, was that as we were kind of writing these documents for WELL, we were simultaneously getting information from the league on their requirements. So there was a lot of kind of rewriting and kind of retooling based on what the league requirements were. So it took a little bit longer. We think that next time we'll be able to do this in 6 to 8 weeks versus the 4.5 months that it took us this time. So we think the process is going to be a little bit easier going forward. And then some of the positive impacts, first and foremost, is taking that institutional knowledge and building a written policy and procedure document. So similar to Mike's team, our, I think, median tenure for our operations staff is 25 plus years. We have some folks who've been with the organization for over 40. So this was really an opportunity to sit down with them and just take that procedural knowledge that they have up here and put it down into like written policy and procedure documents that we can update and keep track of and make adjustments to, which we think is just going to make our operations more efficient later on. So it was a really nice opportunity to kind of force us to put those things down onto paper. And then second, and probably most important, is the validation that our reopen efforts align with, number one, industry standards, and then number two, they're rooted in science. So I'm sure that as everybody has experienced over the last year, and especially over the last 6 to 8 months, as we've been trying to put together kind of these reopen plans, this year has been incredibly challenging. And you have folks that are working in spaces that aren't necessarily their background or their area of expertise. So we really loved the fact that this gave us an opportunity to validate the efforts that we have been putting in to make sure that when staff and when guests come back to our building, they can feel confident and comfortable that it is safe and that we are doing everything in our power to really bring them back to an environment that's not going to cause them harm. So that's kind of our overview for why we chose Well, and then I will kick it over to Ryan to talk about his venue.
Perfect. Again, echoing everybody's sentiments, thanks for having us. We're super excited to be a part of this, of the Green Sports Alliance, as well as the International Well Building Group. If we can go to the next slide. The whole reason we started this is, I believe our last event was somewhere around March 11th that we had with fans, of the Sixers versus the Pistons game. And then suddenly the world comes to an end. That night between 9 p.m. and midnight, everything comes to a halt. And from that next day, our goal is, how do we get back to Broad Street? How do we get our fans back? How do we get our staff back? Keep everyone safe in a good environment, feeling comfortable and ready to come cheer on our teams and come back to work. If we can go to the next slide. So the process of how we chose Well and how we got our certification is we went through the different processes out there, looked at the different certifications. We really settled on Well as one that we thought was well-rounded, that covered all of our needs. When we looked at our facility, we're kind of multifaceted. We're a little bit of office building, a lot of an arena, and so we have roughly 500 to 600 staff in the building full-time on a daily basis. That ramps up to over 1,000 as we get into events. We have NBC Sports Philadelphia, a TV studio that's part of the building. I really thought the Well program covered making the needs for all those different groups accessible and usable for us. So we started this process around October of last fall. We got our certification in January. We submitted our first draft in mid-November, and like Katie talked through, it's a big process. We looked at the 22 items, decided there was 19 to 20 of them that kind of fit our immediate needs, and then how we went about going through the process so quickly is we used all of our resources and all of our team. I kind of shared it, and I looked at each of the 20 points, split it up amongst our different groups, from our security to our HR to our facilities team to our cleaning team. And really each person was assigned, or each group was assigned, 2 or 3 points that they had to work on. With that, what we found is we had a lot of the documentation and a lot of the process and policies in place, and it was just a matter of cleaning them up, putting them into one concise document, rewriting them, because some of these have been, as everyone else mentioned, people have been at our building a long time, and some of these policies were written in the 90s and need to be modernized and updated. So this was a great process of going through and doing that. One of the other things we really did, and would highly recommend to someone going through this, is we leaned heavily on our resources we have and our partners, from our vendors and our contractors. There's a big part of going through your cleaning chemicals and what can be used, what can't be used, what's green certified or green sealed and what's not. So Home Depot Pro is our partner. We really lean on them as, hey guys, we spend X amount of dollars for you guys a year. We need your help here, and kind of put some of the pressure on them to make sure that the products that they were selling us meet the certification process that we need. Same with our contractors, and everyone really jumped in because everyone's excited. Everyone wants to come back to games. Everyone wants to get back to the normal, or the new normal, whatever it turns out to be. But that's the ultimate goal for all of us and all of our team and all of our partners. The third part is we kind of had a new way of thinking about how we were going to do everything. Just because we've done something the same way and it's been passed down from generation to generation of employee didn't mean that was the way we're going to do moving forward. So, in our cleaning department, we took a fresh start and said, just because this is the way we cleaned in February of 2020, this is not the way we're going to clean in February of 2021. Now, part of the reassurance part was the science-based part of the Well kind of assured us that we were doing things the right way, and we have been doing them the right way throughout, even before this process started. So that was super comforting for myself and our staff to know, hey, we have been doing things the right way, but we're going to make a little refinement here. We're going to do a little bit better. And one of the biggest parts for us, and that we're super proud of through this, and is the HVAC system that we've upgraded through this process. In full transparency, this project had started before the pandemic started, but it just fell into our lap that it turned out to be exactly what we needed. We had been underway of doing an $11 million renovation of our HVAC system that started the prior year, which basically is going to allow us to change the air in the arena at a minimum of every 30 minutes. We'll do a full changeover of the air in the arena. Under ideal conditions, we can lower that down to 20 minutes. And at any given time, we're introducing 50% of outside fresh air into the building, which is tremendous. And like, we think we're probably one of the leaders in the industry of what we can do with an indoor arena in our HVAC system. If we go to the next slide. So, the same thing, what we're doing is like everyone else. We've got the stickers, we've got the hand sanitizer, and the education of teaching our staff, teaching our part-time workers, and bringing everyone in. We go to the next slide. And at the end, we got our certification on the first week of January, and we're super proud of it. Great effort amongst all of our team, all of our staff in our building. Couldn't be happier. Turn it back to Melanie.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. And thanks, Katie and Mike, too. That was great just to hear a little bit more about your process, how you worked with other team members and vendors and contractors, the time it takes. I think at this point, we're just going to jump right into some specific questions that I have, and hopefully that the audience has too. So just a reminder, if everyone could continue submitting questions through the questions box. So I'll direct those to our panelists as they come in. But for now, if you all could turn your cameras back on. I want to start with a question that that Ryan just triggered for me, working with different vendors and contractors, and you mentioned how you worked with different departments to make this happen. I think there's people on the line who are pursuing their rating or considering the enrollment, but want to understand that process and a little bit more about the logistics of actually getting the rating. So Katie, I'll kick this question to you first. How did you go about working either internally, externally, or both to complete the rating? Which individuals or departments did you involve? And do you have any recommendations for anyone who might be on the line listening and thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as Ryan and Mike both kind of alluded to, this is a very holistic process. So you really have to involve folks from every department. I think right now I was kind of the project manager for this. And so I was kind of compiling all of the information and writing things down and putting together the documentation and then sending it back out to everyone from HR to our security to cleaning and disinfection, our environmental services staff, all the way over. We have a separate reopen task force that's kind of a collective for our entire operations team. Anybody on the RIP city management side of our business is involved in that, and so everybody had eyes on the document. I think next time we go through this, I think we'll probably take the approach that Ryan and his team did at the Wells Fargo Center and have a little bit more focus on sending it out to those area experts and having them kind of update and evaluate the documentation. And then I will kind of collaborate and synthesize. But yeah, it's really something that has to go across the board. There's not a department that this doesn't touch.
Yeah, I personally have always found that to be a unique and valuable piece of the WELL process, is that it forces us to talk to different departments that we might not be in touch with all of the time, and to have these different groups having communication that otherwise might not have existed, but recognize too that takes some planning and coordination and logistics. Mike, do you have anything you wanted to add to that question too, or Ryan, maybe after that?
Not a ton. We did the exact same thing. We were kind of lucky that a lot of our groups are in-house as opposed to some other arenas, so it made it a little bit easier. We did bi-weekly meetings to kind of keep the process moving along. We started this while we were hosting the NHL Hub City, so it kind of slowed us down for a while. But then once groups kind of finished their pieces, they just dropped off until we got down to that finalized product.
Perfect. And actually, before the webinar started, we received a question from the audience in advance. So I'll throw this out to the three of you as well. Because it's an annual process, and Katie, you mentioned how you're eager to see how the features that are most valuable to you on an annual basis might change. You can adjust the pursuit of the features which ones you're targeting based on what's most important for you that year. So the question is really about staff turnover and changes to staffing. How are you all thinking through this as an annual process to help with maybe longer term health and well-being? And how are you solving for challenges that might arise around staff changes or turnover on a year-by-year basis as it relates back to the rating?
I can jump in on there if guys, unless you guys want to take a first shot. But for us, I think having these documents written down was kind of part of that contingency plan. If we did have like someone retire or if someone moved on to another venue, being able to have those documents written in a way that we have policies and procedures in place and then we can kind of update is a big help. And then we also, we had a lot of training already built into our structure because, I mean, a lot of the folks that we have, I'm sure it's for Ryan and Mike as well, we have a lot of part-time staff that we just have to constantly train because there is turnover there. So our plan is to kind of incorporate these things into those training procedures that we do on either a quarterly or kind of a biannual basis. So this is going to be integrated into there. So like our cleaning and disinfection trainings are now going to be a part of any onboarding for new hires. And then we'll kind of continue that process throughout the year to make sure everybody is up to date with what's happening.
Yeah, that's exactly the same for us. You know, part of the onboarding process is we bring staff on, whether that's full-time or part-time, is reviewing these documents, understanding them. And we're not planning on testing people on, but everybody needs to have a working knowledge of how it works. And, you know, so it doesn't become that it gets passed down from director to manager to superintendent all the way through, that everyone's invested and everyone has a part of it. And honestly, so far, like, it's been one of the best parts of this for me personally is seeing the buy-in that we've had from all levels of our staff, from your everyday part-time cleaner who's super excited that we have these new decals on the doors and they were a part of it and it means something, you know, up to my level, up to our VPs and our ownership group. Like, you know, everyone is ecstatic over it. And, you know, that's going to carry on through our new hires and as people move on and retire and whatnot.
And I'll just add, you know, every building is different, and we all should be doing all of our testing of our air and our water every year, and you know, doing these retraining sessions and all these things. But as we all know, everyone gets busy, and sometimes those little nuances get thrown to the wayside, or at least get pushed, and then the next thing you know, it's been longer than you need to. So having this be a yearly or an annual recertification process is we're really looking forward to it, because it's going to really push us in the right direction to make sure that we are doing these testings and these retrainings in a good case to make sure we can keep this rating.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's really interesting. So getting away from the process and thinking of specifically about some of the health and well-being strategies that make up the rating, a question really for all three of you. What were some of the challenges you faced as you were incorporating the health safety features? What did you learn from them, and how did you solve for that? Brian, do you want to get us started on that one?
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, as we went through each one of the 22-ish points, you know, we kind of decided, okay, this one's for us, you know, this one, you know, we push off. And there were some challenges, you know, and what we realized is as we went through them, there's some that gave us a lot of initial fear and shock. We're like, oh no, how are we going to do this? But then as we kind of put pen to paper and divulged into it, we realized, oh, we've got this. We're already doing this. It was just a matter of finding, you know, we have one policy that has part of it, another policy has part of it, combining all into one documents, you know, and then the innovation points, you know, that's something we got super excited about and realized that, you know, that was great for us. And then, you know, we are part of the Comcast family. So again, like, we were able to lean on them with some of the policies, procedures that they had at the corporate level. And then, you know, some of those that need to be tweaked a little bit because our industry is a little bit different than what they typically do. But, you know, we were able to make it all work, and very happy it all worked out for us.
And Katie kind of touched on this, but the well health safety rating is very holistic. So there's a large chunk of the features that were more HR focused. And we were very lucky that our HR team had been doing a lot of the features as it was already. And when we kind of presented this health safety rating to them and showed, the science behind a lot of it, and why, well, it's a priority to these HR policies, we actually got a few that got changed, and some added benefits to that. So supporting mental health is a big deal in the health safety rating, and we were doing a lot already, but this really pushed HR to add in a few more resources for our hourly staff, which was a big deal for us.
Yeah, and then I think on our side, some of the challenges, we wanted to really focus on the ventilation testing, which is an additional cost. You have to hire a third party to come out and do that testing. So it did increase our costs, but we really felt like the flexibility would allow us to not have to do that every year if we wanted to take a look at other features next year to kind of replace that, especially if the requirements from ASHRAE and things like that kind of stay consistent. And then also the documents that are provided. So one of the really nice things about WELL is they have, for most of the features, example documentation where you can kind of go through and just almost like a check and balance to make sure that you're on the right track with the documents that you're writing, that they're going to be in a format or in a structure that the GBCI will kind of understand, and it's something that was created to kind of help guide you through that process. So those were tools that we were able to use that I think were, in addition to like the league requirements that were sent out, were super helpful as we were kind of framing the information that we had and making documents that we could actually submit.
That's great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that those are helpful. I feel like WELL can be really important from two different perspectives, whether it's to helping understand a framework and specific strategies to consider in this moment, whether it's for reopening or continued operations, or it can be really great from that third party perspective. You already have the policies, you already have the protocols. Let's make sure that they are verified and meeting the stringent WELL requirements. So in those cases where you need to create new policies and protocols, I'm glad that you're finding those sample documents to be helpful. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about how sports venues are such places of gathering. They're places that are at the heart of many of our communities. And so community is a huge piece of this, and how we communicate back your efforts to the public, both internal stakeholders, which you all three have touched on a little bit, but also external stakeholders, fans ultimately when they're returning, and just the community at large in which you are all located. So how did you engage the community throughout this process? How are you communicating your efforts, or maybe how are you looking to do that more in the future? And Mike, I want to start with you because you made an interesting point about considering the community really from the very beginning when you were selecting which venues to undergo the rating process. So I'll kick that question to you first.
Yeah, when it comes to a marketing and PR standpoint, we're not quite there yet. So I'll let the other two kind of touch on that. And Ryan's Wells Fargo Center has a fantastic example. But to your point, when we started looking at which buildings to do, the community center for us was a major component, and it kind of jumped right to the forefront quickly, almost before Scotiabank Arena did. The underprivileged youth in Toronto, when MLC Launchpad got shut down during lockdown and quarantine or whatnot, it was devastating. And some of these youth have nowhere to go, and we all know what kind of trouble I could get into, or any of us could get into, when we have nothing to do. So it was really important for us to make sure that building got this stamp of approval quickly. We actually got it about a month before Scotiabank Arena did. And so to Ryan's point, the seal's up on the door, the communication is going out to the parents right now, saying, send your youth back, send your kids back. We'll take care of them. They're going to be safe in our building. And for us, that was paramount, because unlike a lot of the buildings in the States, we're still a ways away from getting fans back in the building. So we want to make sure it's safe and that the fans feel comfortable when the government allows it. But, getting kids back, getting the community back, using our facilities and taking advantage of what we can offer to them, it was so important to us.
Yep.
And I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. So yeah, piggyback off what Mike said, our communications team at the Wells Fargo Center has done an amazing job of putting out what we have done, what we are doing. to return our fans. We started the Back to Broad campaign. That as we mentioned earlier, that's the goal, is to get everyone back. And we've launched a website, and I encourage everyone to visit. It's pretty simple, just backtobroad.com. It'll teach you a little bit about what we're doing, what we have done, and what we're going to continue to do to make our players feel safe, our fans feel safe, our employees feel safe, and that to let everybody know that we're doing the right thing. And we're so excited about everyone coming back that we hope they're as excited as we are.
Ryan, I was going to let you close because you're so much further in the process than the other two. We're still kind of in between the two of those. So we got our certification in early January, similar to Ryan and Mike. More similar to Mike, we were probably a couple of months out from having any sort of fans in the building. Oregon is one state that is really very cautious on how they are reintroducing fans, and we want to make sure that it's as safe as possible and that the numbers are where they need to be in order to make it safe for fans to be in the building. But we are starting with just kind of the press release to announce that we've done this. We're the first building in Oregon to achieve the health safety rating. So we just kind of launched it with that, and then as we get closer to actually having fans back in, we'll have pretty robust digital strategy where we're really looking to educate people about what WELL is before they come to the building, so that when they get here and they see the seal, they're comfortable with it, they understand what that means, and they've gotten communication from email, on their tickets, on our website, kind of across the board. So we'll start a pretty robust campaign as we get a little bit closer to having fans back in the building with kind of that strategy and communicating what WELL is and what it means.
Yeah, that's perfect, and something that we are definitely helping with too. Kristen mentioned it from the beginning around the awareness campaign that's going on that many of you have probably come across on TV or social media over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, a huge part of that is helping people understand what is the value of the WELL Health Safety Seal on the front door. Why should I feel safer going into this building versus the next? And so, yeah, we see the campaign as a great way to help support some of that work that you all are doing as well, communicating to your stakeholders. So the next question is another one that came in from the audience in advance, and it's around cost. So I heard a few mentions of this, maybe around some of the optional strategies of ventilation, but I just wanted to specifically ask if you're anticipating any average, or what you're seeing for average costs that the venue might be incurring beyond just the initial fee for the rating, but how costs factored into some of the decisions you were making around strategies to pursue to hit that minimum 15.
So I can start that off. So we partnered with our third-party engineering firm to come in and do a full deep dive on our HVAC systems. That itself didn't cost us anything. We have a pretty good relationship with our third party, but their recommendations for us to hit the WELL Health Safety rating does have an annual cost. It'll increase our utilities cost, but pretty minorly, like a couple $1,000 a year, just because of increasing the filters that are in our system will increase the output or whatnot. That being said, the ongoing cost overall, if we looked into a UVGI or an ionization or an air purification system, that's where the bigger cost jumps in. As you'll see, if you go through the health safety rating, that's not a requirement, and it's something that you can explore. And we're still exploring it. We're looking at the data and the scientific evidence out there, whether or not that's needed in our buildings. But overall, just to achieve the rating and the ongoing maintenance of it, it's a couple $1,000 a year, I would say, that it's increased, but nothing substantial.
Yeah, and I can jump in on that too. So some of the testing, like the air quality testing, we were already doing. So it's a little bit of an expansion for what we had to do for the lead requirements. And then the ventilation testing in particular was we, as an organization, decided to do like a full tab test of our buildings because we just hadn't done that in a while, and we wanted to make sure that we were going through the testing and balancing to make sure that our ventilation was operating efficiently. So I think in terms of costs, as Mike said, like those aren't things that you have to do every year. I think we'll strategically kind of plan as we, look to recertify every year. We'll kind of strategically plan and see, how long has that been? Have there been any changes within industry standards or ASHRAE standards? And kind of make that assessment and plan that out a little bit further in advance. So I don't think the costs beyond, those certification are going to be anything more than a couple of thousand to do. I think we want to do the water quality testing every year just because that I think it's important for our staff and our fans that are coming to the building. But beyond that, I think it'll be, incremental, not something that you really have to do, capital expenditures for every year.
Yeah, well, I'll concur with what they said. For us, beyond the one-time fee, the additional cost we put in to get the certification, I wouldn't put it more than $10,000 that we put into some engineering studies. Luckily, we are going through the transformation process of modernizing it and the building. So a lot of the things we had thought about, had budgeted, had planned, and some of them just need a little tweaking left or right just to make the water quality testing. We need to change just slightly what we were doing. So I don't see there being a huge operating cost for us moving forward to continue certification each year. And then, the cost of getting the certification was not that much for us.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a question I know that tends to pop up on people's minds first. So it's a good one to address during the webinar. So another question that actually came in from the audience, if you could rewind the clock, what would you have done differently? So maybe some lessons learned, things you can pass along, being some of the first venues to go through the rating process, to some future venues on the line who might be considering it. What would you have done differently, do you think?
I think one of the things that we would have done differently is around the cleaning products. So WELL has pretty strict standards on what type of cleaning products you can use. If you're Green Seal or Eco Logo certified, like you're in the clear, but if you have products that aren't under those banners, you have to do a lot of due diligence with safety data sheets and the chemicals that are being used in there. And one of the things that I think we would have done is push more on similar to what Ryan and his team did, was really push more on our chemical providers, the folks that we're going through and purchasing from, to provide us with that information versus us trying to become, analysts of SDS sheets and figure out like what meets those requirements. So that's one area that I think we would have, and we will kind of redirect on next year. And then just making sure that you have as many eyes as possible on the documents. I think that's really important because these touch every aspect of the venue. It's really important to go through a few rounds of review. And I think we would have, time permitting, would have probably added another round of review just to make sure that across the board, all levels, we had input from everybody that was available. So those are practices we'll put in for next year's certification.
Mike or Ryan, anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, overall, I was happy with how our process worked, in using of our team. I think the one tweak we made is we probably would have started a little bit earlier, especially seeing, how it's improved the morale of everyone throughout. Like, I wish it's something that we had started in June instead of October. But, all in all, like, I think, using the resources you have available to you, and not putting the onus on one or two people, because it is overwhelming. Like, there's no doubt. Like, when I first read through it, I was like, holy cow, this is a lot. But then, like, once we realized we've got really good team members, we've got a really good staff, we split it up, we did the biweekly calls, it went very smoothly for us. And I'd highly recommend everyone, like, use the resources you have. They're there for a reason, and they're there to help, and everybody wants the same goal. Everyone wants to see the end of the light of this pandemic and hopefully never to go through this again. And so everyone wants that same goal. So use them.
The only thing I'd piggyback off that is use the WELL resources as well. When we started going through it, and creating this new documentation for us, in a lot of ways, we created it from scratch, and that just gives a lot of headaches and a lot of back and forth. And it wasn't until a little later on in the process we realized that all these sample documents were already there for our disposal. So really explore the portal when you get access to it and see everything that's there. They really set you up to succeed and give you all the resources that you need to do well.
And one more thing to add to that, Melanie was actually our contact person for the Rose Quarter campus, and the number of emails that I sent to her and just questions that I had for her, just making sure that we were understanding the requirements as, you know, as they are written. Really leaning on your contact at Well. They are a vast knowledge of resource and are super helpful if you have questions or just aren't sure about, you know, what the requirements are specifically asking. So really focusing on asking those questions and using them as a resource, it was tremendously helpful as we were going through this process.
Yeah, that's good to hear. We've got a full support team at the ready to answer any questions if they do happen to arise. So I know we've got 10 minutes left, so I just want to put a plug out to the audience to submit any final questions for our panelists. But I'll be on the lookout for those while you all help me answer another question, which is around collaboration with the leagues that you all work with and local government. This is something that I know comes up a lot because there is so much information coming from many different points that we have to follow and keep track of and try to align as best as possible. So what are your kind of best practices or tips around how you coordinated with your local governments, local municipalities, and the leagues as well?
So luckily for us, the MBA actually required all buildings to get either well health safety rating or Hvac certified. So it flew really easily, and it's for us because as soon as the NBA jumps on board, then the NHL kind of jumps on board, and so it was perfect for us. And then once we obtained it, we've used it in our lobbying of the provincial government for opening up buildings and getting fans in the stadium. Again, we're a little ways away from that, but it's another tool in our tool chest for that.
Yep, I would exactly mirror what he just said as to what we did. You know, the NBA and the NHL, with their memos and documents they have, gave us a lot of guidance that concurred with Well. You know, and the key was just making sure that we had someone who had the ability to go through all those documents point by point, and make sure that, you know, nothing conflicts was also a little bit of an issue, that nothing's conflicting with Well, and mitigating those circumstances when they came up. But yeah, that's exactly how Toronto did it.
Yeah, and just kind of adding to that as well, I think one of the really nice things is that a lot of the feature requirements are kind of guides. They're not like, you must do this in this specific way. So there's a lot of flexibility to accommodate for local regulations and then also league regulations. So we were able, you know, we had started writing a lot of these documents before the league provided their guidance. And so we were basing it more on federal and recommendations and state regulations. And once we got the league requirements, we were still able to kind of be a little bit malleable with how we approach the documents and incorporate all of those league requirements in there. And then similar to, you know, what Ryan said, like we were able to kind of go back if there was anything in the league documents that we felt would conflict with Well, we were able to kind of go back and say, hey, you know, if the certification is a requirement that we have to have, you know, here's where we need some flexibility with some of the other documentation that you guys are requesting if it didn't quite align with the requirements for Well. So it was kind of nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's great. Well, we are coming to the end of our questions. So I'm just going to put out a final question, which is key takeaways. What's one thing that you want the audience to know before the hour is up? And I'll put that to each of you, maybe starting with you first, Mike.
Yeah, the biggest yeah, sure. The biggest takeaway that we had is it's been more well received than I expected. So again, we haven't gone public to our fans yet. We'll see how they take it, but internally, our hourly staff, again, who have been laid off for a long time, and our internal team members have really seen this as a tool to get fans back in the building. I just had a call with our suites team last week, and they are super excited to have this to talk to their suites clients about how we're going to keep their clients safe. So I knew it was going to be great. I was excited to get a part of it and be the project lead for this for our buildings. But the reception once we got it was it's been very high already. So I'm excited to see how it continues.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and say congrats on being a Well AP. That's awesome. Glad that was part of the process for you.
Thank you.
Ryan, how about you? Any final pieces of advice for the audience, key takeaways?
Yeah, sure. I'll say it made us better. It made me better personally, and it made our staff better. Not that we were doing anything incorrect or wrong, but it reassured us that what we were doing was right, and there's the science behind it, and ultimately everyone's bought into that, and it's made us better from the part-time employee up to the full-time employee.
Yeah, and I can add to that. It is daunting when you look at the requirements. It does seem like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? I think we submitted over 300 pages of documents, but it's doable. And it's not something where, you know, kind of like what Ryan and Mike were saying earlier, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to completely change all of your operations. Like a lot of the stuff the venues are probably already doing. It's just a really efficient way to kind of pare that down and have it in writing and have it be something that you can go back and review, and you're not going to have to update every year. So it is worthwhile. I think, you know, similar to Ryan and Mike, it's been well received internally. I think people see this and they understand the benefits of it. And I think, especially here in Portland, I think this is going to be a really great tool for us to be able to go back to the public and really ensure them or make them feel more comfortable that we're doing everything we can to make them safe. There's no guarantees, but we are doing everything in our power as an organization to make their building safe to come back to. So we think it's going to be a really helpful tool as we go through that process.
Right. Well, we will definitely continue to watch when you all start to externally communicate and help however we can. But I just want to personally thank the three of you, because it's quite a year to pick up a new project and to learn a new system and to dive heads down into this in the middle of a crazy year for everyone personally and professionally. So thank you for all of your work and support of WELL. And I think that's it. We have no questions left to answer. So I'm going to pass it back to Kristen.
Sure. Well, thanks, Melanie. Thank you, Katie, Ryan, and Mike. This was a really great conversation. And we had a couple of questions come in on my side that I know we didn't get a chance to answer. Maybe one quickly we'll try to, and then otherwise we will connect you with the right people after this via email. But maybe for Melanie, just in terms of one question that came in was, can WELL be used for just a portion of a building, or does it have to cover the entire performance of a building? And then kind of looking at what a rating would be, even if you're looking at a campus that has multiple buildings. So if you don't mind, if a question for you before we close out.
No, definitely not. And sorry, I don't see that on my side. So certainly connect us to the right people if we missed any questions. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be the full campus. It could be specific buildings. There's also streamlined approaches for multiple buildings. So if you're sharing policies or sharing protocols, like Katie mentioned at Rose Quarter, so there's streamlined ways to approach the WELL health safety rating if you are looking at multiple facilities or multiple buildings together. And I'll just mention too, you can get in touch with me and the team at healthsafety@wellcertified.com. I'm sure Kristen will share our information as well. And the full health safety rating is publicly available online too. So even in advance of officially enrolling, you can check out the strategies that we talked about, and you can learn more about the research behind them as well. So that's a public resource that's available.
That's great. Well, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all of our attendees. Again, like I said, we'll be following up with the slides and the recording in case you want to go back or even share this with anyone on your team. And then, of course, as Melanie said, please get in touch with myself and or the team at IWBI to learn more about this really important certification. So stay safe, stay healthy. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we hope you can join our next session. Bye, everyone.